What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Say What You Like weekly podcast. We got the Week 8 edition here for you. And joining me on this week's show, I have Jacob over at the Football Fanatic from Anchor. Say hello to the people out there, Jacob.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
All right. And Jacob is a big-time Packers fan, so I wanted to get him on with me this week and talk a little Packers, man. I want to talk a little Packers with you here. And the big question I want to start off with is this. After the Aaron Rodgers injury, are the Green Bay Packers still going to make the playoffs? And if so, who's got to step up for this team? Because Aaron Rodgers was their number one man, the MVP.
Yeah. I don't want to say that they're going to make the playoffs. I think that's pretty bold at this point. We saw their first game last week. Brett Hundley stepped in as the starter with Aaron Rodgers down, and he didn't play that well. He had, I think, 86 yards on the whole game. And I saw signs in the beginning of promise. I think it was the second or third drive. He led them down, ended up scoring a touchdown on the ground himself, and made some nice throws on that drive, but just didn't really do much of anything else the entire rest of the game. So it's definitely had an impact. And, I mean, obviously that's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. He's the best quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. But I didn't expect it to be quite this much. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be quite this much of a step down. I thought Hundley was going to be a little better than this. I mean, it was his first NFL start. He's going against the Saints defense that's been top 10 over the past month or so. So, I mean, it's a good defense. His first week preparing to be the starter, filling in for Aaron Rodgers. So I think next week is the one that I'm going to want, or the next game is the one I'm going to want to watch. They have a bye week this week, and then they're coming back after that. So I think that's, I want to see what he does in that game before I can really make a judgment. But I think if they are going to make the playoffs, I think Aaron Jones is going to have to keep playing the way he's been. It's really helped that offense. And over the past few years, Aaron Rodgers has really been the star for the Packers, and they haven't really had a running game to mention. But the way Aaron Jones is playing right now, that could be the difference maker, especially if Brett Hundley isn't able to get things going.
Yeah, I'd agree, man. Aaron Jones, is beasting, man. He beasted over my Cowboys. I mentioned that when we recorded your recap and reviews that you're going to put up on Anchor probably at the same time this goes up, more or less. And you know what? That's somebody to lean on. Yeah, that's somebody to lean on for these Packers. Someone to help out Hundley. You mentioned the bye week. I think that'll help Hundley to get some extra reps in, get more comfortable with the offense. And I believe in Hundley. I'm a UCLA fan. Of course, he's no Aaron Rodgers. Like, we both agree. I think everybody would agree on that. But,
true.
I mean, what about this defense? Is this defense good enough to get the Packers into the playoffs and help out Hundley? I mean, help out my boy, UCLA, man.
Yeah, I'll talk about the defense. I mean, they've struggled over the past few years. I mean, I don't know how much this goes around outside of Packer fan circles, but Dom Capers has been under fire for quite a long time. Just fans aren't a big fan of him. They don't like his schemes. I mean, I would say I'm less extreme than they are. They all want to fire Capers and stuff. I think they just isn't really it's hard to understand because when you look at the defense, like, at least to the naked eye, it seems like they have a pretty good defense. They've got some good safeties, Morgan Burnett, Clint Dix. Clint Dix was a Pro Bowler last year, and Morgan Burnett was pretty close. They've got some talented young corners. They've got Kevin King. They've got Devon House, who they signed. And they play in I forget what the Nitro Package a lot, which is where they have extra defensive backs on the field because that's where
lots of defensive backs. I was aware of that package. I was aware of that package, the defensive back package.
Yeah, they've got lots of them on the field because that's where their talent is. You got Blake Martinez at inside linebacker. He's been really good. Clay Matthews and Nick Perry at outside linebacker. They've been at least decent. And Mike Daniels on the defensive line. He's very good. Like, there's players on the defense, so I don't know what it's going to take for them to put it together. I think they've got the potential. I think now that Aaron Rodgers is down, they're going to really have to step up. But it takes something like that to really inspire them. And I think at the beginning of the game against the Saints, they had two early interceptions. And I was kind of hoping it was going to continue that way. They ended up giving up a lot more points after that. But it's hard to say. And I think they'll play a little better now that Rodgers is out. Like, you step up when you see a big-time guy, like, you think, this is my time to shine. Like, this is where we have to step up because the guy who's been getting it done for us is out. And I think you'll see a little bit of that, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, honestly.
Yeah, especially in that division, man. You got Minnesota who's balling out. They knocked out Rodgers, Anthony Barr, another UCLA standout. So it's tough. You also have the Lions there. They're 3-3 right now. Are they 500? I believe.
Yeah.
But I like Stafford, so it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, for sure. But we can all agree, Aaron Rodgers, he's the best quarterback in the league right now. But I want to talk about some of these young QBs, coming up right now. Who's trying to knock off quarterbacks like Rodgers and Brady at the top right now. Watson is a rookie. He's playing really well. He was on a bye, so we didn't get to see him this week. But you know what? Let me throw this at you. If you had to pick one, which one do you pick? I'll give you Jameis or Mariota. Who do you like?
Ooh, that's a tough one because they're both guys who have been struggling this year. Winston has been missing quite a few throws of the games I've watched. I think at this point I'd have to go with Mariota. They both he had a bad game last week, and there's no denying that. The 12-9 win over the Browns, and you expect a little more than that from a team that's supposed to be in playoff contention against a team that's 0-7. But I think that partly was due to injury. I want to see him play a little more throughout the season as the injury wears off. But I think Winston has been inconsistent, and I think Mariota's been a little bit better than that. So again, I want to see a little bit more in like the next 2-3 weeks when Mariota's playing healthy again. But I think I'd probably have to go with him at this point.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to agree with you, man. I like Jameis. I like his arm. I like his leadership. He's a mature young player. I really like his leadership. I like his drive, but the guy turns the ball over just a little bit too much for my liking. And for me, the only knock on Mariota is health at this point. I think I also mentioned that on your recording as well. Without repeating myself, those are some of the good young quarterbacks, looking to knock off some of the top quarterbacks. But now, in my humble opinion, these are the top two young QBs in the league. So I'm gonna ask you, man. I'm gonna eliminate myself because I'm biased. Dak or Wentz?
I'm gonna have to say Wentz on that one. I know you probably don't want to hear that, but here's my thought on that one. I talked about Wentz on my podcast, so that's another one where I won't repeat myself there too much. But he's made some great throws. He threw that. It was a 64-yard touchdown, and pretty much all of that was in the air. He hit the receiver in stride, Anthony Hollins. It was a perfect throw. So you've seen him make the throws. We've seen him escape the pressure in the pocket. I talked about that one play where he's completely surrounded. I stopped watching because I thought he was down, and I turned around and all of a sudden he's running for a 17-yard gain. It was crazy. I've seen him make plays, and obviously Dak Prescott makes plays too. But when you look at the team that the Cowboys have, I think they're a little more balanced team, and that helps for Prescott. And they're similar quarterbacks. I'd be very happy with either one of them, but I think Wentz does more with less weapons around him. He doesn't have an Ezekiel Elliott running the ball, and not as good of an offensive line either. So that's the difference maker for me.
Yeah, could not disagree with you on that. I think Wentz doesn't have as many weapons as Dak does on offense. But I will rebut the argument just a bit here because we also have to take into account, let's face it, the Cowboys don't have nearly what the Eagles have on defense. That defensive line is beasting on teams. And I don't, Dallas, come on, they're a joke. Their front seven, outside of DeMarcus Lawrence, who's having a big season, 9.5 sacks right now. So Dak's constantly having to keep this team, playing ahead in order to win because he can't bring these teams back. Once that defense gives up the run, it's all over. So I think you got to give Dak some credit there over Wentz. Now I think this is really close, and everybody's going to say I'm a Cowboys fan and everything, and I'm not going to pick Dak. I'm not going to pick Dak. But I'm not going to pick Wentz either, and hear me out here. I think if you ask, I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out, everybody. I think if you ask the Philadelphia coaching staff and their GM, and you said, would you trade, Dak for, would you trade, they would be trading Wentz for Dak, and they'd say no. But I think if you went to Jerry Jones and you went to Jason Garrett and you asked them, would you trade Dak for Wentz? I think they'd say no. I think both teams are happy with their quarterback. I think you're splitting hairs. I think these two quarterbacks are MVP type quarterbacks going forward in the next few years. But I think if you gave them any other young quarterback, they wouldn't trade. You wouldn't trade. Any other team would trade for Wentz or Dak. Like, I think if the Rams could do it over, they would have picked Goff. Would you agree there?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think if you told the Rams right now, hey, we're going to trade you Dak for Goff, do you think the Rams would pull the trigger there with the Cowboys?
I mean, straight up in the middle of the season, that does make it a little difficult. But I mean, I think Dak is probably better.
Yeah, to me, I think it's close.
Yeah, for sure. And for the record, though, the Eagles have actually given up more points. For the record, though, the Eagles have actually given up more points than the Cowboys this season on defense.
I believe they have. I didn't know that, but yeah, you know what? That's true.
Yeah, it's not by much.
But let's face it. Come on, the Cowboys can't stop the run. That's the thing. Yeah, the Cowboys can't stop the run, especially with Sean Lee out for the couple of games he was. But yeah, that's going to be a debate going forward. We're going to have years to talk about Dak versus Wentz. I just thought it would be interesting to bring up right now, especially with like Carson Palmer getting hurt, and he might have played his last game in the league because he's getting up there in age. It's a little bit of a changing of the guard at quarterback, but I do want to stick to some NFC talk, and we're approaching almost mid-season. At the end of the week, we'll be at mid-season. So at this point, early, you want to give me some picks for who you believe are going to be the 6 teams that are going to represent the NFC in the playoffs this season?
Just rapid fire, or? Yeah.
Just go wherever you want to go, man. Let's just talk some NFC.
Okay. All right. I think the Eagles, we talked about them already. I think they'll make it. The Vikings, the Rams, Seahawks, Saints. The other one is a toss-up for me. I think the Falcons could contend for it if they can turn it around. Maybe the Lions, maybe the Packers, maybe the Redskins, maybe the Cowboys. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different teams I think can contend for that 6th spot. I think that the 5 I've named are probably those are probably locks in my eyes. Maybe not the Seahawks, but I guess I'll just talk about the Rams. They're ones that I essentially see as locks at this point. They've scored more points than any other team in the entire NFL right now, even the Chiefs, with their crazy offensive success this year. They've got more points. And I mean, Jared Goff, we talked about him a little bit. He's been playing well, not up to Dak and Wentz's caliber, but he's been playing well. Todd Gurley's been a complete stud. I mean, they've just been getting it done. Their offense is good. Their defense is good. That's a team that I didn't see it coming this season, but I mean, now that I've seen them play a few games, now that I see that they're 5-2, I mean, you can't deny they've been playing really well. The Saints are another one. We saw them beat the Packers last week, or I watched them. Obviously, I'm a Packer fan, and I saw them beat my Packers. And obviously, Brett Hundley didn't have a great game in that one. We talked about that a little bit, but the Saints are a good team. They have a top 10 defense over the past few months, and obviously they have Drew Brees on offense. They've got Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara in the running game splitting work there. Like, they've got some really good playmakers on both sides of the ball, and that's what you want in a playoff team. You want balance. And it's something that not a lot of teams seem to have this year, but the Saints and the Rams are 2 teams that have that, and those are probably 2 of the top seeds along with the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on a lot of those picks, man. I think a safe bet is that the Eagles make the playoffs. Let's face it, even if they don't end up winning that division for some reason at this point, they're still in prime position to catch a wild card spot. But most likely they're going to win that division at this point. So can't argue there. The one division that I may argue with you about right now is the Minnesota Vikings, because I do like this team. Good defense, good running game. That's what works in the playoffs. That's what gets you in the playoffs. But the quarterback situation, there could be some big changes. We mentioned Teddy Bridgewater is practicing in your podcast, and there could be a big quarterback switch, and we don't know how that team's going to react to that. And at the very least, they're going to be playing with Keenum. We don't know if Bradford is going to play from week to week. We don't even know what's wrong with the guy, right? I mean, someone probably breathed on him too hard or something, and he's out. So I think that's just a big, big question mark at quarterback. So I'm not saying that they're going to fade away. I'm just questioning, can they keep it up through the length of the season? Because I do like Stafford at QB. I think he's the best QB in the division with Aaron Rodgers being out now. And Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, I think he was really the savior for that franchise. He could do almost anything on that football field, and they're going to miss him a lot. So I have a tough time seeing them in there. But like I said, I don't see them as a lock right now. I think the Lions, I would probably give the Lions a slight edge right now. And you never know. Green Bay could still step up at this point, but everywhere else, I got to admit, Saints look like the favorite in the South right now. They're going to get their competition because I don't think Atlanta has the firepower to make a comeback. Mentally right now, it doesn't look like it, but they have the talent. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that. To go back to the Vikings though real quick, I think, the reason I picked them, there's question marks with the Packers. We've talked about that already. And the Lions are 3-3. So the Vikings already have a 2-game lead over them. The Vikings have beaten the Lions head-to-head. They've beaten the Packers head-to-head. So that's the reason I had to go with them, is like the question marks around the Packers, and then also the Vikings have one of the easiest schedules throughout the rest of the season. They're playing the Browns this week, and there's not really a whole lot of notable opponents left on the schedule, so that has a big factor as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'd like to raise that point in another division in the NFC. Let's go to the NFC East. And yes, you know what? Philadelphia has jumped into a great big lead in the NFC East. Dallas is clawing, barely getting to 500 at this point. But they have not played the Eagles at all this season. So if they can win those 2 games, you know what? That's a 3-game switch, which would put them right with the Eagles. So it's not a stretch because Philadelphia hasn't beaten the Cowboys yet, or the Cowboys haven't lost to Philly yet, either way you look at it. So what I'm going to say is there's room for a dramatic swing. Now, these guys are division rivals. I think these teams, Dallas really has underwhelmed in the beginning of the season, but they're hitting their stride. They scored 30 points plus in the last 3 games, and the offense is rolling. If Zeke doesn't face suspension, I think this division comes down to the last game of the season, because on that schedule you got the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cowboys playing on the last week. And I think if we see Zeke for the entire season, I think we're going to see that game come down to who's going to win that division.
I
don't know if you think I'm crazy.
I do. I don't know if it'll come down to that. I really am a believer in the Eagles, and I've talked about that already. So I'm really high on the Wentz and the Eagles, and the Cowboys. Yeah, they're good, but I don't think they're going to win the division, especially with the lead that the Eagles have come out with already. And yeah, definitely it can go either way, but I do think that personally, I think that the Eagles are the better team, and I think that's going to reflect in the rest of the season. And they do have a bit of a tougher schedule coming up. They've got the Broncos, who actually haven't been that great. But, as you mentioned, they're playing the Cowboys twice. They're playing the Seahawks. They're playing the Rams. They're playing the Raiders. So there's some tougher games. There's some easier games in there, too. But I don't know. I really like Carson Wentz. So it's hard for me to think that they lose that division, especially the way they're playing right now. But, yeah, Cowboys, especially if Zeke stays in the rest of the season, I think they probably have the safest bet to make the playoffs outside of the Eagles in the division.
Yeah, so I think there's potential for that last spot. So we're just going to have to see the way this thing plays out this year, man. I mean, bottom line, there's lots of football to be played, for the rest of this year. And some of these teams can fall off faster. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. At this time last year, they were number 1 in my power rankings. They looked unbeatable, and they basically fell off. So you never know. You never know what's around the corner. That's what makes the NFL season great, man. So
that's what makes it
next
so
time, man,
to watch.
I want to get you exactly, man. So next time, man, I want to bring you on. Maybe we'll talk about the AFC if you got the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe
I'd love to do that.
Perfect, man. We'll do that. But we'll keep it short this week. That's all we want to talk about. A little bit of NFC. We'll hit you guys back with the AFC, some AFC playoff predictions, some maybe talk a little bit more about the AFC QB position, see how they're doing over on the other side, on the other conference there. But Jacob, where can the people find you at, man?
Yeah, you can find me as the football fanatic. So you can find me on iTunes or Google Play or whatever, basically anywhere podcasts are, or on the Anchor app. That's where I produce it mainly. Or you can check out footballfanaticpodcast.com. I launched that pretty recently, so I've got all the episodes there, and I've also got all my picks on my weekly pick'em there. So you can check that out, footballfanaticpodcast.com. That's probably the easiest way. But yeah, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find it there, The Football Fanatic.
Perfect. iTunes too, right? iTunes?
Yep, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher.
Cool. All right, Jacob, thanks for joining me on this week's edition of the Say What You Like weekly podcast. I'll be back next week talking some more about the latest going-ons in the NFL. Peace out.